You've learned a lot about Rust, and you've started learning a lot about how to write smart contracts, working with your own CosmWasm contract, even though you don't understand all of the ins and outs of CosmWasm yet. Before we get into the details in the next course, let's go ahead and deploy this so we can interact with our little smart contract on an actual live network. This video will be about the Osmosis testnet, but there are other videos for other platforms in case you want to go there. Now, a note about Osmosis in particular, the mainnet is permissioned, which means if you want to take your smart contract and deploy it on the main live actual blockchain, you can't unless governance approves your code. However, we can deploy to the Osmosis testnet all we want as we work towards that code we want to pass a governance vote with. We're going to install the Osmosis D client so we can work with the network on our local machine and configure for the actual testnet, as well as set up our deployment keys, our deployment wallet, an account that deploys the code and the smart contracts and so on. We'll fund that account a little bit with a testnet faucet. If you're on a mainnet somehow, then you'll need to use real funds. We'll build the smart contract from the Rust into Wasm and then optimize it, which is actually pretty easy. It's easier than it sounds, using an optimizer, and then deploy it, actually upload the smart contract code. Now, there's no smart contract deployed by this point because you need to create an instance of that code in order to have a deployed smart contract addressed with its own storage and so on. One piece of code can have multiple instances, multiple smart contracts that use the same code. Then we'll test it and make sure everything works as expected. You can open a terminal right in your code browser here, but just to keep the screen uncluttered in the video, I'm going to open a separate terminal here. In order to install Osmosis or really any other similar client, you need to have Go installed. You can check whether you have an up-to-date version of Go. As of this video, you need Go 1.22 for most client programs, and I have 1.22.8 because 1.23 doesn't actually work for one of them. If you don't have Go installed and Go version replies with some kind of error or an old version, go to go.dev, click the download button right here, and get the installer package for whatever your platform is. I'm on an M2 Mac, so I have to use the ARM64 Mac OS option. Once Go is installed, if you're on Linux, you'll need to do some kind of apt install. Unless you've got all these tools installed already, you'll need Git, of course, but also Build Essential in order to install Make and GCC and be able to build the things you need. Here's the recommended list of things that you should have for your apt install on Linux. On macOS, you should be good if you've installed Xcode command line tools already. If an error comes up, then please do note it in the feedback. You'll probably just have to install some dependency. Once I'm ready to go with my dependencies, I need to actually clone the associated repository, git clone. I'm going to specify the branch here as version 11.0.1. You can specify a different version, a more up-to-date version, whatever you'd like. And then the actual repo is here at Osmosis Labs organization, the Osmosis repository. Once that's done, change directories into the new folder. And on some platforms, you can just make install now, and it will install for you. You'll be able to run the Osmosis daemon, the Osmosis command like this. You can check it with version, but on my Mac, and if you have a new architecture, M1, M2, M3 Mac, you'll need to come in and instead, make build, and then we'll do a manual install. All we have is a warning here. This will take a lot longer if you've never done it before, because none of the dependencies will be compiled and built. So you'll see a long list of downloaded libraries and so on. Once it's done, then in the directories here, you should see a build folder. And in that build folder is the Osmosis D binary we need. We aren't going to run a whole node or anything. Copy, and you'll need sudo in order to modify user local bin. Copy build Osmosis D to user local bin. Again, on other systems, don't do exactly this. Make install should have it covered for you. Now, when you check Osmosis D version, you should get a version number, and it does in fact show that it's the version we've installed. If you want some assistance on what exactly you can do with Osmosis, just run --help, and you'll see all the sub commands. Osmosis follows, and all of these clients follow a sort of setup where you have Osmosis D and then some command like maybe keys, and then some subcommand like list, for example. So you have command and subcommand, and we're going to use these commands to configure the Osmosis client so it will talk to the proper network. and then to set up our wallet for deploying our smart contract. If you're watching somewhere else, go to heretolearn.xyz for full courses on building Web3 apps, including the next steps on working with the command line for Osmosis D.